The YIMBY movement's interesting. I would characterize it very much an open source movement. I think a lot of different people call themselves YIMBYs. YIMBY sort of takes the premise that for a very long time, the opponents of growth have had a fairly loud mouthpiece. The basic premise of YIMBYism is, well, those shouldn't be the only loud voices. There should be other loud voices. And there are people who have reason, not for political or economic reasons necessarily, although they might, but who have often humanitarian reasons, reasons of social justice, or simply self-interested reasons to advocate for more housing. They see themselves as pragmatic. Housing is a good thing. And obviously there are ideological and political issues around housing, but they basically believe that more is better. This is more or less, so far, kind of a middle-class movement. That doesn't necessarily mean, or the question is it a movement that only reflects sort of middle-class mainstream values? In some sense, this YIMBY vision, it just says, all right, let's build more housing, figure out where to do it, and ideally, the economic argument in the very macro scale is once we have more housing prices, if they don't go down, at least they will stabilize, or at least, to get wonkier about it, the rate of increase of housing prices will decrease. But when we talk about adding housing, obviously we bring up the issue of gentrification and potentially of displacement. What they are basically saying is that the YIMBY movement is essentially commensurate with displacement. That if you want to build new housing, you are necessarily kicking people out. Some of the things that they've said about the YIMBY movement, sort of on the broadest scale, that it is essentially just a tool of capitalism. That real estate speculators and the banks and all sort of the usual capitalist suspects are essentially behind this movement. They're going so far as to say it is a vestige of colonialism. That when you bring new houses into, say, an ethnic neighborhood, that is colonization in a really offensive way that harkens back to, the 1500s. What they've done in a lot of cases is really misrepresent the YIMBY movement. Many of these people on the radical left shouldn't be fighting YIMBYs, they should be aligning with YIMBYs. Because I would say that, depending on who you're talking to, these people have at least 50 to 90% in common. What's weird is that if you're anti-capitalist and so forth, you have much better targets than like a coffee shop. You have JP Morgan, you have Goldman Sachs, you have Wells Fargo, you have the McDonald's that's across the street from the coffee shop that was so controversial. You could fight against these things, but I think what we're seeing, and I think this is the real shame, is that there's a real frustration and sense of powerlessness on the part of these communities, especially in the post-Obama era. I believe in the marketplace of ideas. I want to quote different sides. I want people to have a debate. I believe that those debates should be happening at meetings and so forth. When they are not happening, I don't see how we make progress. And more to the point, I don't see how the forces that are in power don't simply stay in power. I want planners to be aware of what's going on and to psych themselves up, not to take sides, because I don't think that's their job necessarily, but to figure out how to help these sides get along and how to, fix these really intractable problems. If the radical left is saying, you can't build something here because it's antithetical to our neighborhood culture and so forth, to me that is a really distressing precedent.